Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I'm Tony Guerra, author and host, and today I have Devlin Smith, a second-year health pharmacy administration resident at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. She graduates in 5 weeks, so it may be like 3 weeks from when this podcast goes out on June 15th, 2018, and has accepted a role as an associate director at Good Samaritan Hospital at the University of Kentucky. She is an avid marathoner, and she also rides horses, has since she was 5 years old. So, Devlin, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast.
Thanks so much, Tony. It's great to be here.
Well, the first thing I always like to ask, just to give some context and get us to know you a little bit better, is everyone's leadership road is a little bit different. Tell us a little bit about yours and how you got to where you are, but maybe start a little later in pharmacy school, since we'll be talking Pt.1, Pt.2, and career.
Certainly. So my path has actually changed a little bit since I started pharmacy school and entered pharmacy school, which is fun. I thought I was actually going to be a clinical pharmacy specialist when I came in, and realized about 2 years in that what I really loved is pharmacy leadership. So used to work in event trade show management throughout undergrad, and the skills and tasks that I loved there really applied to pharmacy leadership and pharmacy management. So through the next couple of years in pharmacy school, I like to immerse myself in things. If I'm interested in something, I try to find out anything I can about it, any experience, really just soak up any information. And did that through the next couple of years, which led me to a health system pharmacy administration residency, also known as a HSPA residency is what we call them. So there's a number of them around the nation. It's actually a 2-year program. So there's a first year and second year that you sign on for at the same time. And then I also underwent master's courses concomitantly. So we'll graduate with my master's degree in pharmacy leadership and admin actually next week. Coming up quickly. So really the program prepares you to be in health system pharmacy leadership. And what drew me to that is I've always been a person that loves change. So I really like to lead change. I really like to make things better. You know, if I see something that maybe could be done better, maybe needs to be fixed, I immediately want to jump on it and make it happen. So I really, employed that throughout this couple of years of residency, and then I'm excited to use that in this next step at Kentucky.
All right. Well, that's a lot to unpack, and we'll start with first. My first question, I guess, is you said you had events trade show management as your degree. So what was your undergraduate degree or major?
So that was actually a hobby.
Oh, it's a side. Okay, so people don't like side hustle, so side gig but that was your job. You were an event trade show manager. Okay. So a full-time job?
I was.
Okay.
It was during the summer. So in undergrad, I was a cell molecular biology major. But then in my spare time, I was looking for a summer job one year and ended up at this event trade show management company. They actually hired me to work in the warehouse, and then I ended up as a project coordinator for them. So I got to plan events, do trade shows, all those things, which amazingly enough, gave me these great foundational skills that I use every single day in pharmacy leadership.
No, I have an undergraduate English degree, and I didn't say I want to reach 12,000 people with my book, but that's what ended up happening. And if you, I'm going to forget his name, but there's a book that basically says, the unique skills that you're picking up with these side jobs and things like that are actually critical to what you do in practice. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it sounds like they kind of identified you as someone that people listen to, or someone that can organize things, or someone that loves to organize things and move people and get things done. And then you kind of transition to a different role. So it sounds like, did they hire you for one role and then you moved to another one?
They did, yes. That's what happened.
Okay. So then maybe explain to me what a master's degree in leadership is. I see master's degrees in leadership or education and things like that. It sounds like yours is a very practical, hands-on. Can you tell me a little bit about the master's degree first, and then we'll kind of go into the PGY1, PGY2 kind of combo?
Certainly. So the master's degree is actually through the University of Houston, and my residency is a unique one in that it's part of something called the Houston program. So in Houston, Texas, we have the medical center, of course, the Texas Medical Center. And there are actually 7 different hospitals that have these HSPA or pharmacy administration programs, and we all go to class together for this master's in pharmacy leadership and admin. So the coursework is very much based on things that you would want to know or want to have experience in to be able to manage a hospital pharmacy. So the idea is at the end of that 2-year program and that master's course, master's program, you're ready to step into a hospital and manage operations, be that clinical operations, actual pharmacy operations, if you step into like a specialty pharmacy role, any of those things. That's what it really prepares you for. So coursework is all very focused on that and actually pretty custom.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem very theoretical. It seems very practical where you're like, oh, this happened to me. And then you have somebody across the table. It's like, oh, well, this is how we fixed it. And there's 7 of you in the class. I know graduate programs are sometimes a lot smaller. In my master's degree, I remember having sometimes as few as 9 or 10 students. How many students are actually in the classes that you have? Or are you kind of combined online or how does it work?
The majority of them are actually in person, which is great because that means we accept right now a maximum of 9 students or 9 residents in the program per year. So we'll eventually get to a point where we could have 18 in classes that are both first year and second year. But it's amazing because you're in such a small little community. You really get to know these people. And I can't tell you how many times I've been working on something at MD Anderson and been like, oh, my friend Andrea at Texas Children, I remember her, mentioning something on this and shot her a text or an email, and she's got an answer and got an idea. So it's really created this amazing, problem-solving environment that you get to use and a space in which you get to learn from other people that are doing the same thing as you.
It sounds like they're actually preparing you for C-level jobs. CEO, and I don't know if that's in your future or something that you're looking towards, but is that part of it where they're maybe developing you? You're starting with as a directorship, but certainly this seems like this is rather than the MBA, kind of a more practical way of rising through that leadership ladder. What other positions do people have? We'll talk about your position that you got at Kentucky later, but what other positions are people getting, or what kind of positions do people get with this type of master's degree?
The majority of them will step out into like a manager or associate director role, similar to what I have. You have a handful that step straight into a director role, depending on the size of the hospital. Obviously, it's very different being a director for, a 200-bed community hospital versus a 1,000-bed academic medical center.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
A little bit different scope there. But depending on what it is, they'll step out into those originally. As for, long term, there are individuals that have graduated from HSPA programs that have been all over the place. So some go into the vendor side. They're in vendor relations at like BD or, Apexis, any place like that. But you also have some that have ended up as hospital CEOs. I can think of a handful off the top of my head that are either a CEO or even rose to the ranks of like a COO for a large academic medical center, just depending on, how much responsibility they wanted, what their career trajectory was defined as, all those details. So definitely prepares you for that. And it gives you those foundational skills. You're immersed in management and leadership from the very beginning. So it's not a situation where, I have to figure out how to practice on my own, and then someone throws me into management and it's like, oh, what do I do? Like they give you those management skills up front. I like to say my residency specialty is the business of pharmacy is what I call it. So that's what our residency is specialized in.
No, that's amazing. And many pharmacy schools have MBAs and things like that, but I think that sometimes goes too far to the corporate and to the finance side without really working on things that are specific. And it sounds like you're talking about that custom side that makes it specific. Well, it sounds like you landed in the exact right place. And as if it all went perfectly. So maybe tell us, how did you get to the point where you knew this is where you should be applying to? And then we'll talk about fit a little bit later. But how did you know to apply to this residency, and what other residencies did you maybe consider when you were in the application process as a P4?
Yeah, so I am a huge proponent, like I said, of immersing yourself in something. So when I found out I was interested in pharmacy administration, I really tried to talk to anyone that I could that was in pharmacy administration, get experiences there. And that led me to rotation at the FDA. I have talked with hundreds of people, just pick their brain on what they do in pharmacy administration, with their career trajectory. I was also fortunate to work with Hospital Corporation of America's pharmacy leadership, and they were great, great influences on my path forward. So my residency plan, I found out about these health system pharmacy administration residencies, and it really seemed like a best fit. So I applied to a handful of those. I kind of geographically limited myself to Texas and Tennessee just based upon where I wanted to be at that time. So applied to a few programs there, and then went through the interview process and ended up at MD Anderson.
You make it sound so easy. I was at ASHP and we recorded it, and we found that it took almost 10 minutes for all the people to go in to just one session. So we want to say it was thousands of people. And, you see the three deep, the residents are in front, the PGY2s behind them, and then the residency directors, kind of protected behind the castle wall or whatever it was. And so can you maybe tell me a little bit about how it sounds like you did the heavy lifting before you started going towards the residency in terms of like figuring out what you want. I don't want to get all foo-foo with this, but how did you kind of look inward and say, this is right for me? Or because the word administration tends to turn people off, I think. They make it sound like you're in a desk and you're pushing papers, when actually I feel like administration should just change the word to leadership. And I feel like it's always talking to other people. So if you like talking to people, this seems like the job for you. So can you tell me a little bit about advice that you would give somebody before they go into maybe that ASHP mid-year meeting to kind of discovering like, hey, this is how you go look for the ones that are right for you?
Absolutely. So speaking of foo-foo, I actually took a summer in pharmacy school I called it a like self-reflection summer. So actually reached out. I was apparently meant for leadership early. Reached out to a number of friends of mine and then colleagues that I had worked with. And I asked them, what do you think my strengths are and what do you think my weaknesses are? Like, just based on your interaction with me, your perception, your observation, and got their feedback, and then kind of compared it to mine, and just did a lot of thinking that summer about like what I enjoy doing, right? Who do I want to become? And I currently employ like a life plan, and that's still how I approach it is what do I want my legacy to be with my friends, with my family, with my, coworkers? How do I want to be remembered was my approach. And it helped me really identify the things that I was good at and that I wanted to be involved in. And many of those aligned with leadership. So when I got to the point where I was starting to consider residency, I'd already thought through these things, right? I kind of knew who I wanted to be, or at least the general idea of it, enough to pick a residency with it. And then with residency, created a checklist. So what kind of experiences do I want? What kind of environment is important to me? What things do I value in a residency program? A lot of that for me was mentorship and fit. I'm a firm believer in, you're going to have the best, even if you're in the best program in the world, right? The number one residency program anyone could ever end up in. If you're not there with the right people, it's not the right spot for you. I firmly believe that when it comes to residencies, when it comes to jobs. So once I have my checklist of criteria, right? Like I want a health system pharmacy administration program. I want a lot of inpatient experiences. I want the master's degree with this. It was much easier to narrow things down. So by the time I got to mid-year, I had a list of, 10 programs that I wanted to go talk to. And then among those, I could narrow it down a little bit more based on who I wanted to apply to, based on the fit and the conversation. Because you've got to be able to have, good communication with the people you work with. I mean, there's so much feedback and so much communication in residency. If that's awkward and that's not smooth and it's not a good fit there, it's going to be a tough year or two for you.
Yeah, no, I try to, I guess my recommendation is as they go in is, I keep hearing it as an anti-dating experience where you go in and you're like, oh no. In my head, I had this and this is what I saw and this is not going to work, and you can just pass by the booth. So it's not awkward, when you have 10,000 people there. Right. But it really is, as so many people are like, oh my gosh, well, I got to get my CV to the residency director who's 3 rows in or whatever. And I'm like, no, you just got to see if you want to hang out with those people, because right. Those residents are going to end up, the next residents are going to be a lot like those, because that's going to be the people that they bond with. And it's not really, I don't know that I just find that, in looking at it over the years, the residents don't change a ton, like in terms of just which kind of people would fit at a certain place in a certain area of the country. So you talk about that, and you're kind of staying in the South. If you're talking Tennessee, Houston, I know Texas wanted to be its own state, so I don't know how that fits in. But tell me a little bit about how, I guess. So you've got this choice. You've got the one that you want. Tell me a little bit about making residency not the end goal. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-interview, but so many students, it almost sounds like, after they do their residency, they're going to get like a pension and they're retired. That's it. They did it. They finished, they did the residency. Tell me how it's just really a step onto, your career or your next life.
Yeah, so this is something that I absolutely preach and support when I'm talking to some of the students I mentor as well. Like, residency is not your end goal. Residency is a tool and a, step along the way to the end goal. And the end goal is being the pharmacist or the leader or whatever that you want to be. So I think sometimes it's difficult in pharmacy school because residency gets preached so much, depending upon where you are, that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be nothing if I don't get a residency. Well, maybe residency is not for you. Maybe you're meant to go into, community pharmacy, or maybe you're meant to go into a staff pharmacist role where you don't want a residency straight out, or maybe you're going to start a company. Like, who knows how that plays out? There's so many things that, you learn outside of residency that play into your career path, that residency is not the end goal there. It's really just a training tool along the way. So like for me, my end goal was being in health system leadership. So whether that's inside or outside of pharmacy 30 or 40 years from now, I want to be in health system leadership or something related to that. I love organizing an environment for people to shine in. Like, the way I see leadership as my job is to give you the tools and create the space for you to go do amazing things. And that's what I want to do every single day. So residency training for me was a step to get to that point. And to get to that point, I needed this leadership and management and master's degree. So it made sense for me there. For others that are considering maybe like a pharmacy specialty, residency is a tool to make you an effective pharmacist when you get out into that next job. I love how I'm reading a book by Angela Duckworth right now. Some of y'all may be familiar. It's called Grit. And she talks about how it's really difficult once you leave school that, you don't have a checklist of things anymore. Like, everyone in pharmacy school can tell you, oh, I had this many exams until the end, or this many rotations until the end. And same with residency training, but real life's not that way. So the point of residency training is to prepare you and give you the skills to be able to succeed when there's no checklist for every day and there's no rotation that you're on every month. So it's really that stepping stone that just gives you everything you need to be successful later on.
Yeah, I'm really struggling. This is my first summer off since I was like 16. So I'm teaching an online class, but that's about it. So I'm like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. So I was thinking about talking to some retirees, like, hey, what do you guys do? It's not all golf, right? Like, there's things to do, right? So
they consult, Tony. They consult.
Okay. All right. I appreciate you giving me the answer in 5 seconds or less. All right. So.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.